right? So if you look at these pictures, easily you will be able to understand that this particular plant is a rose plant, right? So flower is the most attractive part of the plant, right? So for all the flowering plant, there is this flower which is very attractive and usually has a very nice smell, right? So now when we talk about the flower, we should understand that what are the different parts of it. We have talked about leaves, we have talked about stem and root, and we've seen what are the different functions that are associated with these parts. Now we'll talk about flowers, right? So first thing is that this is one of the most attractive part of the flowering plant. Apart from that, it also helps you in recognizing the plants, right? So if I give you a simple stalk, right, if there is just a simple stalk, you won't be able to recognize it. Maybe the stalk has leaves. To an extent, you might take a guess, right? But as soon as you see a flower on it, immediately you will be able to recognize it as one or the other kind of a flower, right? Now, if you look at these pictures and images, you will find that flowers are usually brightly colored and they are pretty beautiful to look at, right? They are very pleasant to look at, and usually it is seen that in the gardens, there are a lot of flowering plants. So now let's perform an activity, and this is a very easy activity, student. You can do it with the help of your teacher, and you will be able to understand about the different parts of the flower. So first of all, let's understand that in this activity, what are the kinds of flowers that you can take, right? So you may collect from your surroundings. You can make group of 2 to 3 friends, and then you can ask them to bring some flowers. And what kind of flowers can you bring? First of all, you can bring China rose, right? China rose. Then you can bring Dhatura flower, right? Then you can bring mustard flower. And then maybe you can bring gulmohar, right? And in this way, you can bring 2 to 3 flowers. Why am I saying you can bring 2 to 3 flowers? So that you can understand that how these flowers are different from each other and what are the similarities. When I'm saying the parts of the flower, then you can check in all these parts or in all these flowers whether or not the parts are similar, right? So what you're going to get is a flower that is completely blossomed, and other you can get a bud, right? So get a bud of the Dhatura flower, get the complete flower, then you can get the China rose bud, and then you can get the whole complete blossomed flower, right? So now when we are going to talk about the flowers, first you need to observe them, right? So you will find that there are 2 very prominent, parts which you will first observe. One is the very brightly colored part, and other you might see at the back of the flower, you will see these green leaf-like structures, right? So what are these parts? These are the leaf-like structures. So these brightly colored parts are called as the petals, right? These are beautiful to look at. These are brightly colored. You will find among China rose only there are various colored flowers. Means there are pink, there is red, right? Sometimes it's a mixture of colors, so it's beautifully colored. Then again, the Dhatura flower is white in color, mustard is yellow, and in this way you will find that different petals have different colors, right? So if you look at this image, you will see that this leaf-like structure is called as the sepal, right? So what is it? It is a leaf-like structure, right? Then when you talk about petal, so petal is the brightly colored structure, right? So this brightly colored structure is very attractive to look at, and usually with the help of this structure, you are able to recognize the different parts of the flower. The reason that these petals are very brightly colored is to attract insects, right? So you will in the later classes you will find out, and in the later chapters, that why do we need these petals to be brightly colored, right? These are the basic structures that you will observe in the flowers. Now further, before we move forward and perform this activity completely, there are certain things that you will need, right? So what are those things? You will need a glass slide, right? Then you will need blade, you will need a magnifying glass, and you will need water, right? So in this way, you will need all these 4 items for the experiment to go further. When we talk about, there are basically 4 parts of the flower, and we are going to discuss it in detail with the help of this activity. So first, with the help of observation itself, you are able to recognize 2 parts. One is the petal and the other is the sepal, right? So you have seen that how petal is brightly colored, and in different flowers you have different colors. Sepal, on the other hand, is a green colored part, right? So sepal is the leaf-like structure. Now let's understand what is the function of sepal. Now if you look at this particular picture, over here you will see there are buds, and you will find that over here, if you look at this particular bud, what is it covered with? It is covered with the green leaf-like structure, and this is called as the sepal, right? Now if you look over here, this particular bud is now blossoming, right? And this is sepal. So the function of sepal is to protect the flower, especially when it is in the bud-like structure, when it is in the bud phase, right? So when the flower is in a bud phase, so this sepal, that is the leaf-like structure, protects the flower. Now if you touch the texture of the petal and you touch the texture of the sepal, you will find that sepal is a little thicker, it's a little bit more, you can say, stronger than the petals. Petals are really fragile, right? And this is the reason why sepal acts as, or rather I should say, sepal provides protection, right? It helps in providing protection to the flower, right? So once it has blossomed, so it looks something like this. Once it has blossomed, so sepals open up and the flower has blossomed, and usually you can see the sepals like this. Now if you look at this flower, you will see that the petals are different. That means that these are not joined together, these are separated. So if you want, you can simply pluck out the petals, right? For this activity, I would suggest that you take a huge white chart, you take a big chart, and you can, whatever flowers you've taken, just pluck out the petals from there and arrange it. Suppose this is a chart that you have, so pluck out certain petals and arrange it like this, right? And just write down that what you have taken out are the petals. Similarly, you can take out the sepals also. Over here, you can see how the sepals are separated from one another. So in this way, you can take out the sepals as well, and you can write down the sepals. Now, this is the plant of rose, and in the previous slide, we were studying the plant of China. Now, if you look at this particular flower, you will find that the petals of this flower, as you can see over here, please notice that all the petals are joined together. Usually, this is a Dhatura flower, right? This is a Dhatura flower, and you can see that the flower shape is what? It is bell-shaped. What shape? It is bell-shaped, right? So, it looks like a bell. The reason is that all the petals are joined together. Now, if you notice the sepal also is almost joined together, only this upper part is separated. The reason is why that when the bud is closed for this Dhatura plant, so when it has to open, when the flower has separated sepals, it opens like this, right? Whereas when we talk about the plants which have jointed sepals or bell-like structure, the flower of the structure is like a bell. So only the upper part opens like this and the flower blossoms, right? So in this way, you can see that how the sepals are not separated, right? So this flower is bell-shaped and it's a Dhatura flower, and when you have to observe it, you will think that over here we were able to pluck these petals separately and sepals separately. But in this case, this will not happen. Why? Because what you will need to do is you will need to cut this flower vertically. Even the sepals need to be cut like this, right? So in this direction, you will have to cut open the flower, right? So up till now, we have studied 2 parts. One is the petal and other is the sepal. We have seen what is the difference between the two and what is the function of the petal and the sepal. Now, once you have understood about the petals and sepals, let's make a table like this and understand what we are going to do is we are going to observe these flowers and we are going to note down our observations. So first of all, let's take an example, and over here we can write down China rose, right? And then number and color of sepals. So you can count that how many sepals are there. So usually in China rose you will find there are five sepals and the color is green, right? And suppose you've taken a red colored China rose, in that also the petals are usually 5, right? And the color is let's say red, right? The flower that you've taken is red in color. Are the sepals joined or separated? So you know the sepals are what? These are separated, right? So you can easily pluck them out. And over here the petals are also separated. Now next you will find the column is talking about stamen and pistil. And you've seen, students, we have not talked about these two parts. So what we are going to do is we are going to talk about these two parts later, and then what you're going to do, you're going to come back to the table and fill it up. Now similarly you can take the example of Dhatura, and then you can simply fill the same, right? So you can see that the number of petals over here you can hardly count it. The reason is the petals are joined together, but definitely the color is white, right? So in the same way you can see the sepals are joined, right? Similarly the petals are also joined, right? So in this way fill out all the table and you can find that what are the different shapes, and you will get more and more information, and with the help of this table you will be able to observe that whether or not the flowers are similar, or they are, all the flowers are similar, at what parts, we will find similarity in the flower, and what are the differences. So you will find that when we are talking about the parts of flower, there are basic 4 parts, which you will find in most of the plants, right? Now, moving on, let's understand about the other parts that we were talking, that is the pistil and the stamen, right? So these are the 2 parts which we will talk about further. So when we talk about pistil and stamen, before that what we need to do is, for proper observation, just pluck out all the petals so that you're able to observe these 2 parts properly. Now let's move on and understand about stamen. So usually, students, stamen, you will find that there are 2 basic parts of stamen. First is the anther, right? So there are different shapes of anther. You might find anther looking of any of these shapes, right? So in one flower you will find a single type. So these are the different shapes that you might find in different flowers. Then other is the filament. Anther, students, is the one where you will find the pollen grains, whereas filament is the part which attaches the anther to the flower, right? So when you have opened the petals and you have plucked out the sepals, what you can do is you can observe the stamen. What you have to observe there is, first of all, the parts of the stamen. That means you will have to check whether you are able to identify these 2 parts, that is the anther and the filament. Then next what you have to observe is the number of stamens, right? So how many stamens are there? You can count it easily. You can pluck it out with the help of a forceps, right? And you can put it in the chart, if you remember the chart that we had made. So number of stamens that you can pick. Then what you can do is you can observe the type of stamen that is there. Out of these, what type of stamen is there? For this you can use a magnifying glass, and then what you can do is you can draw the stamen, right? So what in which flower what type of stamen is there, what is the number of stamen, that you will have to check, right? Then next is the innermost part of the flower. This is called as the pistil, right? So in the flower you will find that there is one pistil, right? Now pistil further has 3 parts. One is the stigma, that is the uppermost part, then you have the style, and then you have ovary, right? So these are the 3 further parts of a pistil. Now to understand this particular part, we will conduct one more activity. For this, I would like to suggest that I would strongly recommend that you take the help of your teacher and then you perform this activity. To understand the pistil more clearly, we will perform another activity. And what we are going to do is we are going to take a blade and very, very carefully we are going to cut the pistils in 2 ways. right? So take 2 pistils of the same flower. You can have say 2 China roses. So from one you will pluck a pistil, and from the other China rose also you will take a pistil and cut it into 2 parts, rather in different ways, right? So first way is by cutting it vertically, right? So what you're going to do is you are going to take a blade and you are going to cut it in a vertical direction as shown is in the figure. Then next what you're going to do is you are going to cut the other pistil horizontally, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to cut it horizontally, right? So in this way you will find that once you have opened it, another precaution that you need to take is that you need to moisten it, means so that it doesn't dry up and you're able to observe the structure of the pistil properly. So what you're going to do is you are going to put a drop of water once you have cut it open, right? Now what you're going to do, you're going to observe it with the help of a microscope or a magnifying glass. What you will observe, students, is this structure. For the vertically cut ovary, right, you will find the structure looking something like this, and for the horizontal one you will find that it looks like this. Now in both of these you can see that this is what these are some bead-like structures which you are able to observe in both of them. These bead-like structures are called as the ovules, right? So this is called as the ovules, right? So like, let's go back to the pistil, and you will see that there is one stigma, then you have style, and then you have ovary. So within the ovary you have ovules, right? So stigma is the upper part, then style is this funnel-like structure, and then you have the ovary, and which contains the bead-like structure called as the ovules. Right? Once you have observed this, what you are going to do is you are going to further draw the this observation in your copy, in your notebook, and with the help of this experiment, this activity, you will be able to remember all the parts of the plant. Right? Now moving on, if you remember, we were filling up a table. Now what you are going to do is you will see whether the stamens, they are free or joined to the petals. So you can name it however you want. In China rose you will find that the stamens are, let's go back and look how the stamens are. So as you can see, the stamens are free, right? So you can write down free, right? So next, when you move on, you will see pistil, whether it is present or absent. So suppose you find and you see that the pistil is present. Now, you might think that, okay, over here you have seen that the question is whether or not the pistil is present or absent. So students, this is one of the very interesting things, that there are basic 4 parts, right? So in this activity we saw that there are basic 4 parts. One is the sepal, right? Then you have the petals, then you have stamen, right? And then further you have the pistil. Now there are certain flowers in which you will either find stamen or you will find the pistil, and that is why this question was there in the table, whether or not in the flower pistil was present, right? So in this way we have seen that there are 4 main parts of the flower, and because we had taken so many different flowers, we have observed that how these flowers differ from one another and in what ways they are similar. Right? And we also talked about how these different parts of the flower is present in almost all the flowers that we observe, right? Now let's understand what is the function and uses of flowers. First of all, the very important function is that these flowers have the role in reproduction and multiplication, and you will observe this particular and you will study about this role in your further classes. Then it is a source of food basically for the insects because it provides nectar, right? Then because of the nice smell, you will find that it is also used for perfumes. Then it is also used for spices. For example, the flower of clove is used as your spice, right? And then you have aesthetics, that means for decoration purposes, usually flowers like roses, right, orchids, these are used for your decoration purposes. For perfumes, roses are also used, right? So in this way, we saw how the function of flower is very, very important in a plant. Also, we saw that how it is useful for us as well, right? So now once we have understood the different parts of the flower, we are going to answer some of the questions.